Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's evening session of All India Management Association Young Leader Council evening catch up and a lecture session. Today's session is pretty interesting, and I think we haven't really covered a topic of this genre in our conversation because we typically talk about startups, venture capital, sports, music, arts. But I think one area which impacts all of us in some way or the other, whether we are doing business or whether in our personal lives, we are all always being impacted by government and we interact with government, right? But some people also find out innovative ways to um, help government use and embrace technology and leverage e-governance for better citizen experience. And I was fortunate to meet our esteemed speaker some time back, and he introduced this word for me, GovTech, because I, like most of you, knew about e-governance, about technology in governance, but this GovTech, portmanteau was pretty interesting for me to hear from Amit. And I think in this particular session, and we're so privileged to have Amit, and I'll introduce him in a minute. It's going to be very interesting from three broad perspectives. One, take this opportunity to learn a bit more about what does technology mean at scale when you're doing it in government and various government initiatives. Second, look at ways of how to work with government. So take some inspiration from the journey of our speaker here to see how we can figure out ways of collaborating with government, whether you are in business or you have a solution, but you want to impact at scale, how you can collaborate with government. And then third, obviously, also look at ways around engaging in public-private partnerships, look at ways of working with government, suggesting them ideas. What does that mean? Look at the procedural and process aspects of it as well, which I'm sure Amit would cover in his session today. And then, of course, we have a Q&A towards the end. You can always ask any specific questions which you want to know. Right. So it's my great privilege to introduce our speaker today, Amit Shukla. He runs an organization called EasyGov, which is now part of the Geo platform company. And, he has raised the most successful social protection startup in GovTech. And he's been working with various state governments over the last 2 decades, states like Karnataka, Tripura, and he's created portals for the governments, which you can have a look at. He's created portals around MyGov, MyGeo, which is solving some of the most complex problems, of the country. EasyGov's vision and mission, if you guys look around, is to actually make social protection progressive and at the economy level as well as at the public level. He has also filed 4 patents on progressive social protection. I never knew that coming as a tech guy, I never knew that you can file patents around such an interesting area. He is a well recognized thinker, speaker, and practitioner on social protection. In his previous stints, he has worked with Accenture and KPMG advisory as well. And uh, he's worked as an advisor for various state governments, so more than 15 plus projects. And he's also a champion of change for Digital India and is on the board of several startups and foundations as investor or mentor. And he is a regular speaker in various forums on startups, AI, ML, GovTech, and philosophy. With this, a very warm welcome to you, Amit, on this forum. We are so
Thank you.
privileged to have you with
Thank
us.
you, Kartik.
Right. And in terms of beginning this session, Amit, and as I see your profile, you've worked in Big Four and consulting companies, all of it, in sort of public domain in a way, because you worked in consulting also around state governments and GovTech in general. But it'll be interesting to just understand your journey, that what sort of inspired you, even at an early age, to get associated with, government initiatives, because typically most people when you're studying, it's always exciting to work in a private company in an MNC. That's the goal of an average middle class person in India, to sort of make money and sort of get exposure. So what sort of prompted you and triggered you in that direction, and how your journey has been, and it'll be good to also get to learn a bit of pearls of wisdom and learnings along the way. So if you could share your journey with us, Amit.
Sure. Thanks, Karthik, having me here. So let me, when many of you, I did my BTech in computer science, and then when I was studying management, somehow I was understanding the whole concept, but I was not able to understand how to use this knowledge for large scale impact. And you know that like any other colleges, people come as a guest speaker and you listen to them and you get motivated and inspired. But I didn't get motivated to hear any business leader who is talking about that I have raised my company from here to 100 crore or 1,000 crore, right? And I have built like this wonderful product or a service. Somehow it was not exciting me. And then I heard a gentleman called Dr. Jajit Bhattacharya. He came and he talked about e-governance. And somehow I thought that, okay, this is a perfect blend, management, computer science, and opportunity to make impact at large scale, not only in the life of a people, but contributes towards the development of the country. And that's the genesis. And I decided that, okay, I got my thing, and I did my summer training in e-governance as early as in 2005. And I went to a district called Sitapur. It's a remote district in Sitapur where I lived there for 3 months. And I worked on grievance redressal system. And that further opened up the possibility of using technology for a larger good of a public and improving the governance. So Karthik, that was the starting point, right? How I got into the e-governance.
Brilliant, brilliant. And a lot of people, when we interact with them, and especially part of I'm representing young leaders in this forum. They always There's this common perception that working in government is extremely hard. It's a very tenacious process. You need a lot of perseverance. And I've seen a lot of people get actually distracted by this thought. They have good ideas. They want to work with government. They want to work in government. There's a great talent pool available, but there's this perception of too much lethargy. Oh, it's going to take so much of time. While the skill entices you, but the procedural and bureaucratic layers distract and demotivate a lot of people. So take us through some examples where you also had similar views, but when you got in the system, give us that view of inside the system that, is it worth it? Or maybe things have changed and we're just carrying these baggages from the past that it's difficult, it's tricky, and maybe things are very easier now. So give us that inside out view.
Yeah. So what I will do, I will talk about two projects, right, before
Sure.
my entrepreneurship that will give you good insight.
Okay.
So first myth is that it is with India. It is generally with the government. I worked in Australia, Saudi Arabia, Japan. Right. So when you talk about the government, you have to understand when you're working in a GovTech space, you're dealing with a bureaucrat, a politician, right, and a business. So whatever you are going to do, you have to understand the politics, you have to understand the bureaucratic structure, and you need to find out, right? And I will give you one very interesting example from India. So let's say I was working for National Intelligence Grid when post Mumbai attack, we decided to build up a counter-terrorism system so that the terrorist act can be predicted. So I worked on that assignment for close to 2 years, and right, and then why it is become very interesting. So we wanted to have one information that was that if, let's say, a scooter will be stolen, and that may be used for planting a bomb, right? So this information is required to complete the pattern. But when a scooter is stolen, you can't judge what is the intent for which a scooter is stolen. It may be for general petty theft, right? So who will determine at the time of a theft whether it will be used for some terrorist activity or it is just a petty theft? And this fine line, because as per the governance structure of India, law and order is a state subject, terrorism is a national subject. So now you understand thin line, right? The state will say, I will not share this scooter information till the time you prove it that it is used for a terrorism purpose. You are getting into my territory of power. So till the time you don't understand this power equation, between a federal government, a state government, what is your constitution, how this power is distributed, how the power dynamics will play. And these are very logical things, right? Over a period of a time when I was young, I used to get very frustrated about these things, but there is a merit, right? We look at the one side, what a beautiful power balance we have in India, but sometime they stop you taking such kind of a reform. Similarly, right, I was working in Saudi Arabia, as I've told you, and I was trying to improve their employment programs, employment welfare program. So they give unemployment allowances up to 8,000 Saudi riyal, right? So roughly you can say in Indian currency 1.5 lakh to 1.6 lakh. You will get if you are you are studied but didn't get the employment. Their problem is that at the middle and the lower level jobs that basically contribute the highest percentage of the job in any country, 95% are expat. 95% is taken away by the foreigners. And if they have to move away from the oil economy, right, they want this 95% people to get into the skilled. They want to get them employed. But look, now the king, it's a monarchy, it's not a democracy. But if king try to withdraw this unemployment allowances, it will be taken as an anti-people initiative, right? And because you, so like you take example of like if I start giving you the free electricity, right, without naming any politician, sorry for that, right? And then I decide to withdraw that scheme one day, you will not like me. And being a politician, right, I will never do something that go against me. So, and that's what I said, it's very easy to introduce a social protection. It is extremely difficult to withdraw it. That's why our country has now hundreds of the welfare program, because every government, when they come into the power, they start a welfare program, but nobody will stop it, because even at every stage, there are the segment of a beneficiaries who are getting benefit out of it. Even if they are not a true beneficiary or not, but they are a voter for sure. And even if it is a democracy or a monarchy, you do not want to offend your people, right? So, and that is becomes very interesting in this domain, where you have to understand the politics, economics, the bureaucracy, and then only you take a right decision.
Right. And interesting, you talked about some of the initiatives, and even if we look at back home, like in India, there have been certain very interesting successful projects as well at scale, like the PAN rollout back in the day, or more recently Aadhaar, or UPI, which everybody talks about. Even globally now in conferences, I've seen people talk about UPI. So, what's been your experience in terms of these high-scale successful initiatives? What has worked in favor? Why some of these initiatives have scaled vis-a-vis the other ones? Like GEM is a big win again, right? A lot of people have praised it globally. So, what have been the drivers of success for some of these initiatives, and how we can sort of leverage and learn from them to cross-pollinate it into other initiatives?
Very interesting and very important question for people who are trying to get into the GovTech. In some time, I will get into the question also that what is GovTech, what defines GovTech. But and these are the cornerstone where we need to do a refer to if you are into a GovTech. Look at my learning is, first thing is that you should start GovTech once you are into that position of authority. Right, so you will understand and appreciate that Aadhaar is driven by Nandan Nilekani. So his intent was not to do business with the government. His intent was to use. He was already a successful person. He ran Infosys, right, and he was the person who wrote the book that Imagining India. Right, so he had a great vision, and he had already a very strong brand. And that's why he got a rank of a cabinet minister when he became the chairman of UIDAI. Right? Getting a rank of a cabinet minister gives you the immense power to drive such kind of a large initiative. Unless otherwise you will get into the between the politicians and the bureaucrat. I'm not saying that the Nandan's journey was easy, right? It was a difficult one, but at least with the power of authority, access to the right corridor, right? You can at least force few things. For example, I remember listening to him in one of the forum. People wanted many fields in Aadhaar. He took a stand that no, Aadhaar will not have any other field other than this basic field. Even he was not in favor of having address, right? He wants to make it very simple. The job of Aadhaar is to make it authenticity, right? Authenticate a user. That's it. But finally, when the request was coming, he was able to take a stand because of the position of authority that was of a cabinet minister and his the background. So that is one thing that you need to remember. If you want to do in the government, it has to be top down. You can't make it bottom up if you're looking for making some reform. Second important thing is the policies. Initially, right, we wanted to do like Aadhaar and everything very quickly, but later on we decided to go slow because for the right reason, governance has its own speed. And my suggestion to anyone who is trying to work with the government for the reform, all you have to do is stick to your stand. Don't lose hope. It will take time. It will become frustrating. Perseverance is the most important skill if you're into a GovTech. And learn from these all initiatives, whether it's a UPI, CoWIN, these all are what you are seeing. It's just a surface of it. If there is no Aadhaar, there is no eKYC, DigiLocker, eSign, right? And if you do not have this authentication layer, you cannot onboard customer in a real time. If you cannot onboard a customer in real time, you cannot have a real-time transaction. And then we have to get into the financial sector, right? It was not like that we jumped into this. First, we created an NPCI. Then we created this RTGS. And after that, it came IMPS. And IMPS was really fast. There was no need of getting into the even a faster payment system. But then we get into the UPI. And then we didn't stop there. Then we built on the top of that OCN, Open Credit Email Network, account aggregator. So the message, right, without getting into the more stuff that they have built, CoWIN is again built on the same platform of a technology. What need to understand, get your policies right, get the governance right, create a legal framework, and then work deep into the technology structures, create those kind of an ecosystem where the whole ecosystem can thrive. You should not have a motivation for money. They didn't make any money from the government. CoWIN was free of cost. DigiLocker is free of cost. eSign is free of cost. Don't think of making money, right? So what is important? Don't try to make money from the government. Be at the position of a power of authority so that you can drive and play a strategic game. Start with the legal framework. Technology comes much, much later.
Got it. And so, so if I hear you right, so motivation for somebody to get in GovTech would be purely to create impact for the country and philanthropic reasons, or is there a way to make money also to run the company or organization?
Okay, so GovTech industry globally is a $800 billion industry, and it is growing with the CAGR over 20%. Right? So there is money, no doubt about it. Right? But you have to have a lot of patience. You need to create some success story. So if you're looking for an early success, GovTech may not be the place because of the two reasons. You are dealing with the government. Government, because of the right reason, will go slow. Right? So for them, it is more important to be safe. Right? So they are not the entrepreneur. They are not into risk-taking business. For the right reason, they have to be risk averse and they have to go slow. Right? So you need to stick around. So if you're looking for an early success, GovTech is not a space. But if for a long-term success, it is a great space, because if you have worked in a GovTech, just understand that how deep you understand people, politics, and business. After that, whatever you want to do, you will never miss out the fundamental of the business, right? The policies or anything. Within the government, in the developed country, it's a very vibrant economy. It is not as good as fintech, right? So I will never compare GovTech with a fintech, right? But what I'm saying that still there can be a unicorn. There are unicorn globally in the GovTech space. Where the problem in India lies, in terms of a GovTech, is 3-4 things. First, right? We have a very interesting procurement system where we select usually a lowest cost bidder, or even if it is a quality and cost based selection, QC-based selection, then there is a weightage given to the technical score and the financial score. That means, right, you can't make infinite money or a lot of money, right, from the government. And again, for the right reason, it's a taxpayer money. They have to put those checks and balances so that people don't throw away the taxpayer money like this, right? So that's the one reason. Second, in the procurement itself, there is 3 tender process. So if you are innovative, you can't get 3 tender, right? Government tried to beat this through Swiss challenge method, where they said, so in the GFR, General Financial Rule, we admitted Swiss challenge method for innovating, for procuring innovative solution. But there is no success story in India as of now. And again, because of the risk-averse nature of the government, it's a taxpayer money. Why to take that risk? Third, a startup can give all these platform to the government free of cost. But the problem is, will government allow to monetize the data? They're sitting on the huge data, right? So I will give you another classic example. I'm in a social protection space, right? So let's say there are 40,000 students who are getting a scholarship. And I found that there are 10,000 students who are not getting a scholarship, but they need it more, right? And I go out and I said to the government, look, I will give you the tech system, tech platform free of cost, but you allow me to use this data. And what I am going to do, I will not going to sell like education courses to this data. I will not do that. Only thing that I will do, the people who are not able to get this scholarship, I will try to avail this scholarship through foundations and the trust. Or I will raise money for them, right, to get money. Looks very good now. But the problem is, to do that, first government has to admit that they don't have a money for these 10,000 students. If they admit, it becomes the point for their opposition political party to bring them down, that the government does not have a money even to pay for the public. So you get into very interesting things where their opportunity to monetize the data is very limited if you're in a GovTech. If government is able to crack that problem, where data can be monetized for a rightful purpose within the policy framework, then in India, GovTech can also thrive as high as fintech.
Right. And even from a tech perspective, since you mentioned that most of these frameworks, even the backend protocol, I mean, most of the if we talk about UPI or now ONDC is coming in, so the entire tech stack is also open source and free, right? So again, what is the I think what I'm trying to understand from you is, what are the ways and means? Because you said you cannot take money from government, it has to be free. Then you said you cannot get money from data. So I'm just sort of trying to understand, where do you exactly make money, or do you think, which I understood, you say that you learn from government and then maybe make money in private sector from that experience, or
No, not really.
what is the actual revenue model for a GovTech company? I just wanted to understand that a bit better.
I think you have you hit the core, right? If there is an answer to this question, right, GovTech will be as thriving as fintech. So there is no direct answer. Let me first admit it honestly. At least in Indian context, there is no direct answer, right? It's very difficult. So in government, what you can do, you can first do what EasyGov is doing, provide platform as a service. Don't own any data. Anyways, in the tech, government is the one of the biggest buyer. So when I was working in Australia, right, or in Saudi Arabia, we deployed SAP, social protection system, and SAP was a product company, right? And Accenture was a system integrator, the implementation partner. So you can still build a wonderful product and you can sell them as a platform as a service or platform on a license. That's a one model of making money.
But with the open API policy and backend protocol, I mean, the intent of government is to stop procuring platforms as well, right? I mean, that's the longer term goal.
So government says that if I procure a licensed software, my problem is that I get a lock-in with the vendor, right? And I do not want to get into the lock-in into the vendor, and the vendor has an opportunity to exploit me. For example, if I take a licensed software for election, running an election, and let's say election is getting closer, and this person says that, look, I have changed my platform fees Now I will charge 5x.
No,
I have two
absolutely fair
options,
enough.
right?
So,
Either I delay the election
right.
or I pay him 5x. So for the right reason, government always rely more on a open source technology, right?
Right,
Then
which will increase in future, which brings me back to my core question, that what is the opportunity to make money for an average company in GovTech?
yeah. So uh, I will give you. It's a tricky one, right? But so first you need to find a government through which you will create a success model without the money, any desire for making money, right? So, and your purpose is basically to find out the connecting field with the
Hmm.
government. Like for example, if I built a Aadhaar stack, right? Though it looks like a UPI and everything, you're talking in terms of GovTech, but who is the biggest beneficiary of this whole stack? FinTech. You would not have such a thriving FinTech system in India if the GovTech would have not supported it. So when you do a GovTech, you develop the whole vertical. So you can develop an e-commerce vertical with, like, as you are talking about the backend protocol, right? And this ONDC, Open Network Digital Commerce. So what basically you are trying to do? You are trying to solve fundamental problem what only government can do. Look from a larger game point of view. If I want to build up a startup ecosystem around fintech or e-commerce, I will start from a GovTech. Once I have done that, right, then there is a potential for this whole ecosystem from somewhere between zero to very small to scale up very rapidly at very higher valuation. And if I have
Understood, but that's a game which can be played by Nandans of the world, right? But for anybody who is aspiring, who's got a good solution, who wants to work in GovTech and is not in that league, what is the opportunity for them to create an impact, but at the same time pay for bills also in this category?
yeah, so it's not like that there is no money, first of all, right? Even if you are doing like open source or right, and then you have made your and eventually you have to, whether it's a license or not, it becomes open source because government will ask all the rights, government will ask source code to make it vendor neutral, vendor independent, right? So even if you have a license, you give the source code away to the government, right? In all practical reasons, in at least in the GovTech industry, you can only survive through a service fee, right? You say that, look, I have developed, let's say, this solution. Now only I can implement. Anyone else also can implement it. It's not rocket science, but the cost of implementation of that entity will be 10x higher, right?
Okay.
So I can implement it cheaper. So I will get a service money, right? That is, my bid will become competitive. So like, for example, like what EasyGov has done, we became an OEM partner with the SAP.
Mhm.
As soon as yesterday, we launched our product on a Microsoft Azure cloud for using by the public. Now what happens, right? We are into the game. There is a platform. We collaborate with the large player. When there is a bidding, we will bid as one of the player, right? If the government will even ask for a source code, that gives me the edge, because SAP or Oracle will not give their source code away. I can give the source code away. And because it's a very niche. I work in a social protection space, right? So it's a very niche. So in that case, if government has to reduce their cost of operation, they have to rely on.
Got it. Got it. So I'm also, in the interest of time, taking some audience questions along the way. So one of the questions we have is from Mr. Mahadevan, who asked that, is there any study which has been done by government to do a sort of a comparative study, that when there was a lot of paperwork versus now everything is digital or paperless, what's been the relative sort of achievement gap or benefit analysis which has happened? Or I mean, apart from the general jazz of making everything paperless, has there been any tangible benefit in terms of the efficiency or productivity? Is there a study which has been done around it?
There is a lot of article and there are different newspaper that covers this kind of a study. So as recent as I read an article in Economic Times, those who are studying the tech in the Gujarat, right, and the performance of the welfare schemes. So that was not good, right? So let me talk about it in this way, and then this also gives me the opportunity about EasyGov. So India has spent 19 lakh crore every year on social protection. 19 lakh crore. That is a significant amount of our budget, out of which there is around 30 to 40% error. That is around 7 lakh to 8 lakh crore is not being used for the intended purpose. There is an error of exclusion or error of inclusion. What is error of exclusion? When you say a beggar on a road, when you say a kid not going to the school, when you see a construction worker walking on the street during the COVID, when you see a person sleeping on a footpath, these are all classic example of error of exclusion. What people should be getting, they are not getting it. Error of inclusion is, you must have read in the news that a guy took his Mercedes to get a subsidized food, right? So that is a typical example of error of inclusion. That is huge. And the people keep on doing studies, many academic institutes, and they keep on proving this point. And you know, as you rightly said, technology has no role to play. Going paperless doesn't mean that you became efficient. It's a very different problem. So I will talk about example. I think PM Kisan was completely automated. But we know that the definition of a Kisan was the person who owns the land, agriculture land. We know as a country that the person who owns the agricultural land, they are usually the landlords. They are the bhumiyar. They are the jamidar. They are not the farmers. Our workforce that works on the field, they are usually a landless, right? So now you get into the fundamental. Who is farmer? Who is construction worker? And technology does not have an answer to these questions. First, you have to clear your fundamental, right? Then you have to build a logic on top of it, what EasyGov does, so that you can reduce this error of exclusion. So there is no one study, but if you have interest in this field, in every 10 days or 15 days, you will read a news article where some media house or some company or some university has done the postmortem of the success and the failure of different IT initiatives of the government.
Got it. And we got one more question from Mr. Amit Aneja, and he's talking about initiatives in health tech by government. Like he's asking if there is any initiative in which we are utilizing health-related data in all the, be it during COVID, a lot of apps that came across, and even for insurance tech, government has a lot of applications and platforms. So is there any larger initiative which is going in GovTech in that direction of using citizen health data for better
Yes.
customized information gathering for the citizens of the country?
Yes. So the Ministry of Health is working very closely with Niti Aayog, and the stack is known as health stack. Like you have an India stack, there is a health stack that basically factor into the payer, the provider, right, and the patient. Right. So basically, there are, as you rightly said, there are three key players into the health ecosystem. One is an insurer. So your whole Ayushman Bharat is classic example where we have used technology a lot to connect the insurer, and then there is a provider, right, and there is a consumer. So for that, if you need to understand the whole health stack, it is available on a Google. It's a public document, and you can read a lot, right? What are the stack component, how it is getting built, and it is also addressing in a way the problem of data exchange in the health sector, because the data is very sensitive in the health, and without a privacy, violating the privacy of the citizen, there has to be a very powerful framework. For example, if someone is suffering from some illness, if this data get disclosed, that will be a disaster. So all those framework has been also built, and those are the part of health stack.
Got it. And what do you see the larger initiatives which the government is driving in terms of promoting the GovTech startup ecosystem? Because for fintech, we have seen for edutech, for health tech, we have seen the ecosystem develop. But GovTech is still, sort of controlled by a few large organizations, right? Or people who are attached to them in some way or the other. But what is the possibility of democratizing GovTech startups in the country?
I will take this with a little bit right critics to the government. So, wherever the government was supposed to take money, they have used the tech wonderfully, right? Whether it's a income tax department, right? The tech has been used wonderfully. Passport, where 1,500 rupees to be collected, the tech has been used wonderfully. In the custom and excise, tech has been used wonderfully, right? So, but where the government was supposed to give away the taxpayer money back to the public, where government is, this is a place where government is not using tech as much as they should use while collecting the money from the public. And this is what, right? And this is the space social protection is. And it's a tricky one, right? Because if you make it very transparent, you say that these are the beneficiary, I'm going to give money to this beneficiary only. Sometime it is not politically a right decision, right?
Got
So that is something becomes tricky when it comes to the part of the expenses. But I will not say, right, that it is not using in the giving away. So COVID was a classic example where government give free vaccination and used a tech wonderfully, right? But what to short answer to, like, there's no space for a small player by them. Still, it is driven by the large player, and it has to be, because you can't expect a startup to build up a application that will serve millions of transactions per second. The kind of a scale you need, the kind of investment you need, right? And knowing that you will not get paid from the government.
But why can't we follow the Dubai model? So in Dubai, as you would be probably aware of, they have things like Dubai Future Foundation. They have ways and means in which you can actually have government as your first customer. So you may not be a big player, but you have an innovative solution and government will invest in you as well.
Yeah,
So
so
that sort of a model, is it possible to replicate in the Indian context? Do you see an opportunity?
yeah, very much possible, right? And I would request urge IMA to write to the government, right? They start a policy and giving a simple, like uh, the uh, the, uh, the so what government has done in the startup policy, that in the government procurement, if you're a startup recognized by government of India, there is no experience criteria that is required. There is no turnover criteria that is required. And you are also do not need to submit the performance bank guarantee, right? But it doesn't help. Still, if this would have helped, we could have seen many tender given to the startup using these three exclusion. That means these three things are not the bottleneck of stopping startup to get into, right? Whereas if you see a gem model, many startup has got into this, but those are like commodity solution. So if I'm a startup and I start building a great pen right now, right? I still have a great opportunity. I will get into the gem and sell my pen, and I will compete with the large player. The problem is when you try to get into the real GovTech, where you want to improve the governance inside, then it becomes, there are huge entry barrier, right? It's very difficult to get that side to improve the governance, and especially when it is a matter of giving away the money.
Got it. And what do you see as the emerging trends? Like as you rightly said, fintech, edutech, health tech, these are solved spaces, right? What are the new frontiers which you, if you were to do crystal ball gazing, what are some of the new sectors which you think are going to be disrupted by GovTech in coming months or years?
No, I think in India, let me think a little bit. Health is for sure. Health tech is going to be big. And the way we have solved the fintech fundamental problem of a governance using GovTech, if you do the same GovTech initiative in the health, right, then health tech will going to be very, very big. That is one. Second, I think in agri-tech, in agriculture, there is a lot to be done. And probably like you have a health stack, we are building also agri-stack, right? So if we make agri-stack as prominent, as powerful like fintech stack, right, like UPI, IMPS, and account aggregator and OCN kind of a framework, there is a lot of scope in the agriculture space as well that can give a lot of boost to the agri-tech. Apart from that, I think the fundamental problem like waste, there is a lot of tech that can be used, what I call it clean tech, right? So if GovTech becomes a right policy enabler, then clean tech also will have a great future.
Got it. And in terms of attracting the right talent, so because in GovTech there are so many limited opportunities as you mentioned. How to source the best talent? Because top talent in tech would typically want to go in fintech, or they want to go in edtech or health tech, where there's a lot of traction, and we've got unicorns being built. There is a shorter horizon to increase the valuation of the company. What would drive the top talent of the country to GovTech? What can we do to do that in your?
So let me put first one ray of a hope, right? I've talked about that is difficult GovTech. I started my startup in 2015, right? 2017, I raised money from Rajan Anandan, Tata Trust, and many investors. People were thinking it's a GovTech, it's very difficult, right? There is no future of a GovTech. In 2019, I got acquired by Geo Platform and I gave good exit to my investors. So things are not that bad. Only thing is
But
that
you are one in 100 of millions sort of outlier data point, if I may say,
yeah,
statistically,
that's
which
also
is
true.
not a good proxy for what is the trend in the market.
Yeah, no, that's true. That I completely agree with you on that. But the point I wanted to drive that if you are into a GovTech, be ready to sacrifice your life. Think not from years, think from a decade point of view. If Nandan has to think from a decade point of view, right, then we are a too small player to not think anything less than a decade. So we have to think in a GovTech, you have to think in decades, not in years. And and believe me, right, money is one thing, obviously, but the fulfillment that you get while working in a GovTech, the you can't compare with any other tech. If you have to ask me, right, I'm extremely happy. I have no regret, right, of doing a GovTech, because the fulfillment, if even if I correct a small thing, I will change millions of a life with very, very small change. And that's the opportunity that you have. And if you change a millions of a life, if you're not looking for a direct return, think that what learning you will have in this process, where you have made your way through politics, bureaucracy, the legal framework, and how much wisdom you have gained. Using this wisdom, what can you do? You can be a politician. You can be a strategic, you can join any donor agency, right? Or you can have your own foundation. You can be a political reformist, right? Or you can get into the in the developed world, unlike India, in the all the product company, there is a huge space. Like in the SAP, there is a full-blown government vertical. In Accenture, there is a government vertical. In IBM, there is a government vertical. If it is a 800 billion US dollar industry, that means there is an industry available in globe. So, and if you learn from India, try to understand that the complexity that India GovTech has will make it far easy for you to work in the GovTech outside India and any other country.
And since you mentioned outside, and this is my last question to you, just want to understand how do you see GovTech evolving in India in comparison to GovTech outside India? And also for players like you, does the scope limit to India, or are you also working on international initiatives around GovTech? And do you see somebody was telling me when I had a chat in Bangalore a couple of months back that there's a lot of sharing which is happening between countries, that India is advising other countries on how to build a UPI-like system. Just random things I overheard. But since you are in middle
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
action, do you see that sort of institutionalized sharing of information and GovTech opportunities outside India as well for people like you?
It is happening. It is happening at a great scale. So the whole the India Stack team, right? They are working very closely with the World Bank. The initiative is already on move, and we are working several developing countries, a few African nations, Southeast Asian nation, many developing countries are working very closely with our India team to build what you called uh, the digital public good, right? And we are transferring this knowledge to these countries, the digital public good that we have done. So there are a lot of possibilities to collaborate with the other countries, and we are doing. Only thing is that still this space is driven by biggies. There is still room is not there for a small player. When I say small, right, I'm not talking about and I'm not talking about even a startup. When I say small, like even a mid-segment IT company will also not dare to get into this space till the time they have significant revenue coming from a non-government space.
Got it. And absolutely, you are now in the biggies list yourself. So I'm sure people who are today listening to this session, if they want to enter GovTech, I think we have a strategic advisor, mentor, and collaborator already available in your
Yeah. So
shape
sorry,
and form and
I think
avatar.
you asked one more question. So we have started bidding. So we already submitted our bid to 3 African nations and 1 Southeast Asian nation. So we are going global now. So though
Wow.
we have lost 2 out of 3, but I think this is the way it should start with. So yeah, we are now aggressive on the global front.
More brilliant. And I think it's very heartening to see Amit. I remember I used to work in Deloitte, and we had this team who used to do work with government. And I remember there was a different positioning and understanding of the work they do. But I think with a technology catalyst to it, it sounds pretty interesting now. 50, I'm talking 15 years back. It used to be boring reports and DPR and whatnot. I'm sure you relate to it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
fast
yes.
forward now, I think it sounds pretty exciting to be in government and GovTech space.
Correct.
Thank you so much for sharing these learnings, Amit. And I'm sure a lot of our viewers would, after the session, reach out to us for potential collaboration requests with you or help in working with government in some shape or form, or take your advice and inputs in terms of how to address opportunities with government, right? So we'll
Right.
pass those on to you and would be happy if you could um, take out time to sort of support them in addressing those concerns. I
Right.
also want to especially thank the SRM Zelimai Engineering College, Chennai, and Vivekananda Institute of Management Studies. I can see the students. There are 120 students, Amit, in VIMS and SRM. They are all in one group. So we today
Wow.
have more than 500 combined audience members. It's a very, I think, one of the most watched sessions in this calendar year for us. Thank you so much for
Wonderful.
making it so interesting. And you've been very open and candid. People typically shy away from these conversations talking about government. But I really appreciate and I'm really grateful that you were so open and transparent in sharing these inputs with us candidly. And
Thank
we
you.
will always lean on to you for support and collaboration in future, Amit. It was
Anytime,
amazing.
anytime. But I will leave with the last message, right? Though it is very challenging, but if it is very challenging, there is very less competition as well. So if you enter into the fintech, it is very highly competitive. So life will not make much a difference, right? So there are different types of challenges. There are different types of challenges. But if you are committed for changing the destiny of your own generations, those are in future. If you are committed to change the destiny of your country, you are committed to change the politics of the country, the GovTech is the right place there where you should be. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Amit. Thanks so much, IMA YLC family. Thanks so much, our audience members and students who have joined us. Have a great weekend ahead. And we'll pass on all the queries to you, Amit, after the session, whoever reached out to us.
Yeah.
Thank you